Hari Om. Today's topic is Purushartha Chatushtay and Prasthanatrayi. And my name is Smita. If anyone asks the question, what do you want? The natural and spontaneous answer will be, I want a happiness. Everyone's answer will be the same. A person of any age, in any condition, at any position, and at given any point, any time, everyone wants a happiness. And in the search of that happiness, everyone sets the goals, targets, and try to achieve it. Setting of a goal in a life is as necessary as a food, sleep, and air. When we don't set any goals, we can spend our whole life running up and down and will not achieve anything. Goals motivates us and makes our life interesting. Goals helps us to use our highest potentials. We can decide exactly where to spend our time, money and energy. Actually, when we have to set goals, we have to stop and think what exactly I want. And we come to know that our so called goals are always an end to a small aspiration, never comes under the category of the satisfying eternally. They are very superficial. Modern society has made us blindly follow the other people's aspiration and fall into the rat race. And in the end, when we realize that we have been on a meaningless trip, then when we realize it, it is too late. To avoid this, setting of a proper goal is very, very important. The thing that which we aspire should satisfy us and makes us feel the fulfillment of the purpose of the life. What is that? Attaining which we can say there is nothing left to attain now. This is a core feeling. Everyone has this feeling. And the knowledge of the self starts with such fundamental questions. Scripture says, take a pause, look within, introspect, and discover. The scriptures do not ask us to blindly follow, but only help us to conduct this inquiry. And this is called as an inquiry into the Purushartha Chatushtaya. It can be said that the notion of the Purushartha is based on the two beliefs. First one is that this entire universe and its cosmic process is teleological. It has a specific goal. And the second one is that mankind is the highest in the process of this universe. Human existence has a special importance, but experiencing this importance, it is possible only through the proper and qualified efforts and work. That's why this Purushartha are specifically the term is given in the scriptures. Purusha is meaning is a Atman or human being. And Artha, in the general term, it is a money, but the main concept is purpose or ultimate aim. So, Purushartha means the purpose of a human being. These are the values for the universe. It helps us to take a correct decisions. Human mind is a bundle of desires. Abundant of resources and plenty of materials are available to satisfy these needs. These desires all together is called as a kama. The material essential and the means to acquire them comes under the artha. If all the desires of everyone are to be fulfilled, then there will be a chaos. Therefore, there is a controlling principle called as a dharma. It is not meant to be greedy while accumulating the wealth, but only to meet one's need to be free from worries. Kama means enjoyment of the pleasure of life, provided one does not lose the health and harmony of the body and mind. So, dharma is the observation of one's ethical, social, intellectual, and religious duties in the life. Without the ethical qualities, spiritual attainment is not possible. So, moksha, the self realization, is the ultimate aim of the human life. Purushartha are the blueprint for the human fulfillment. It helps us to create a satisfying, balanced, and meaningful life at the deepest and most holistic level. So, dharma. Dharma means the truth, the right way of living. On the individual level, we can think the dharma as being conscious about our word, action, and thought, or we can say having a compassion and sensitivity towards the need of others. Dharma brings the stability and order, lawful and harmonious life. It helps us to do right things, to be virtuous, to be helpful, and to interact successfully in the society. Vedanta tells us how you will come to know that you are following the dharma when your actions are spontaneously correct. Your you automatically know what to do, correct things to do in given any situations. You are in a harmony within, and the life is effortless. That phase is called as a dharma yukta. Dharma is considered as the first of the Purushartha because without of the Dharma, Artha and Kama can be easily become a self-destructive. Next one is a Artha, economical and material aspect of the life. It includes the whole range of tangible objects which are required in our daily life for upkeeping householdings, raising of the family income, discharging of the religious duties, and everything. Needs vary from person to person. Artha includes everything: knowledge, friendship, love, career, skill, good health, prosperity, all the things. We can say that Artha provides a security for the life. Next one is a Kama. Kama signifies desire, wish, passion, emotions, sensory pleasures, enjoyment of life, affection, art, beauty, music, love, intimacy, and so on. Kama is good and necessary when it exists to support the dharma and becomes a part of richness of life. Without the dharma, excessive kama can lead to overindulgence, addiction, sloth, greed, lust. It is destructive. Dharma, Artha, and Kama are altogether called as a Trivarga. Well-being of the man depends upon the harmonious blending of the Dharma, Artha, and Kama. The initial part of the Vedas talk about these three vargas. About this three varga. But the Upanishada, the end part of the Veda, states that these desires are endless. And so the wise person start thinking about the real and permanent happiness. And this is the journey, this is the starting point, the journey towards the moksha. So, moksha mentioned as the supreme tranquility and the highest place. It is a state of self satisfaction, self fulfillment. Moksha is a last end. It can be nothing has to be attained now. This this fulfillment can be happen, or we can experience it only after the satisfying of the first threes. That is when artha, dharma, artha, kama are dharma is guiding to the kama and artha, and when these three are fulfilled properly, we can experience the moksha. Liberation is not the posthumous state to be attained after the death only, but it is a stage to be attained right here in this life only. Liberation is a freedom from the sense of lack or insecurity and fear. It is possible when a person discovers that he is free from all limitations of time, space, and individuality, free from ego, and he is really a transcendental Aham Brahmasmi, experience the reality of the self, living in the truth is called as a moksha experiences. Scripture says that dharma, artha are like a riverbed. Dharma and artha are like a riverbed to the artha and kama, which are the rivers. If the river artha and kama is bridged and flow out of the riverbed, it is called as will be a disaster. So these are very important one. Ultimate aim of the life is moksha, complete detachment. But this detachment or vairagya can't be gained easily. One has to gradually detach oneself from these desires or worldly pleasures. Restricting the natural and unrestricted tendencies of the man and guiding it into the right path by defining the limits is necessary to accomplish the purushartha. These guidelines are very important, and that's why the sages made the ashrama vyavastha. Ashrama is the part in which the phases of the life are described. This ashrama system teaches us the pravrutti marga, extremely active in the worldly life, and what type of sadhana or lifestyle one should follow or maintain, so that as the age advances one can follow the nivritti marga, the path of detachment. This process should be gradually happen, and that's why this ashrama concept is explained by the sages. So ashrama system and the purushartha are very linked process. These systems runs parallel to each other. Ashrama literally means the step in the journey of the life. According to the Hindu ethics, the final aim of life is a moksha. Every ashrama is a step in the long journey towards the realization of that aim. The great seers of the Indian society had given the guidelines for the planning of the man's life through the ashrama theory. So first one was the brahmacharya. This is the first stage for acquiring the knowledge, developing the disciplines, and molding the character. His behavior, thought patterns, attitude, feelings, and instincts are channelized in the way that it will prepare a sound base for the years to come. This is the correct time to learn the dharma, the ethical foundation. If in the initial phase the dharma is perfectly taught or perfectly absorbed, the next what is coming is the grahastha ashram, where the artha and kama are dominating, but it will be on the background or the strong foundation of the dharma. So next ashrama was a grahastha ashrama. When the student has completed his studentship, he is ready to take up the duties and responsibilities of the householder life. In this stage, he gets married, earn money, begets children, and all the things. In this stage, the individual pursue the wealth, artha, and pleasure, kama, within the limits of the moral values, that is, the dharma. In this stage, the individual fulfill his obligations towards the society and give the support to other ashramas also. So grahastha ashram is considered as a important because it supports the brahmacharya ashram and also helps to the sannyasis also and contribute to the society welfare also. That's why grahastha ashram is called as a very important one. The next one is a vanaprastha ashram, that is a retirement phase. Here the person hand over the responsibilities towards the next generation and gradually withdraws from the world. This is a transition phase from the householder's life where the wealth, security, pleasure, desires, all these artha and kama are important, to the another phase where the emphasis on the moksha, that is a vairagya or detachment, starts. So vanaprastha is a preparation for the sannyasi life. The last one is a sannyasi ashram. Sannyas ashram is a stage of renunciation. The primary goal of a sannyasi is to attain the moksha. So, to achieve these goals, they start meditating and experience the reality. They get detached from the worldly pleasures, and they follow the dharma shastra. They study the dharma shastra and they go into the deepened things, because everything is guided by their family life was also guided by the dharma. Vanaprastha is also guided by the dharma. So dharma shastra becomes a very firm over here in the sannyas ashram. So the sannyasi's life is thus a spiritual life. He is the source of inspiration and founder of the path of the dharma for the society. The doctrine of the Purushartha is the answer given to the post-millennial most important questions of the life. What is the supreme goal of life? Man can live a fulfilled life provided he follows the four Purushartha meticulously. Dharma, Artha, Kama are helpful to maintain a disciplined life, regulate the social conduct, and helpful for the welfare of the society. Moksha teaches us self control, develop a broad view, and feel the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole universe is our family members. It gives a spiritual development, and all this can be happened in the one life if the line of action or everything is in a correct way, the setting of a correct goal, and the journey should be in a very disciplined manner. We can attain the goal of life, that is a moksha, in a very easily and smoothly way. And that's why this ashrama vyavastha and purushartha are very helpful. So our next topic is prasthanatrayi. This Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra. These three texts are accepted as a primary source or most authoritative text. These texts teaches us the means to strive for the moksha. How to attain the moksha? These are the teachings given by these three texts. So these, by the Vedanta philosophy, accept as these three texts are the very primary one. The Adi Shankaracharya has wrote the first commentary on these three texts, and he has named these three texts as a Prasthanatraya. Prasthana in the Sanskrit it has many meanings, like a departure, journey, march, moving, all these things. But the main concept we can say that it is a proceeding. So we can say that prasthana means proceeding towards the one's liberation. That is a way described. And this three, that is a trai, is a collection of the three. So what are these three? The Shruti Prasthana, Smruti Prasthana and Nyaya Prasthana. These are the three prasthanas. First one is a Shruti Prasthana. Shruti consists of the Vedas and Upanishads. These are called as a Shruti, literally meaning what is heard. Vedas are considered to be non-human origin. These are the scriptures of the highest authority in the Hinduism. Veda Upanishads are unquestionable, canonical in the nature. There are four Vedas: Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharva Veda. All four Vedas deal with the different aspects of the Hinduism. Vedas are again classified under the four subgroups. Samhita, which is a collection of the rhymes or mantras. Brahmanye, information about the sacrifice, rituals and priests. Aranyaka contains the discussion and interpretation of the ceremonies, rituals, whatever is followed. And Upanishad, the discussion will be about the philosophical terms. Essence of Vedas is in the Upanishads. So the Upanishad forms the concluding portion of the Vedas, so they are called as a Vedanta, end of Veda. They are also called as a Vedanta in the sense that they contains the essence or the final conclusion of the Vedas. The term Upanishad, Upanishad, literally means the sitting near with a determination. It means to sit near the teacher in order to acquire the knowledge, that is a true knowledge. Most of the Upanishads are in a discussion form, Guru and Shishya. The Guru tells the key knowledge or primary knowledge, teaches to the perfect person, that is a Shishya, perfect Shishya. There is a lot of Upanishads available. There is no specification of number and all these things. More than 200 Upanishads are available, are known. But one of the Upanishad, that is a Muktika Upanishad, in that Upanishad 108 Upanishads names is listed, and it is written over there that one must read and understand these Upanishads, 108 Upanishads, to attain the moksha. And among them also Mandukya Upanishad is very important. So to no, you know, not necessary to learn and read all the Upanishads. Only these 108 Upanishads are prime or important. Among these 108 Upanishads, the 10 Upanishads are considered as a Mukhya Upanishad or primary Upanishad. Adi Shankaracharya has wrote commentary on these 10 Upanishads, and he explained that these are the important Upanishads. So these are called as a Mukhya Upanishad. These are Isha, Kena, Katha Prashna, Mundaka Mandukya, Aitariya Taitariya, Chandokya, and Brihadaranyaka. In Upanishads are in a dialogue form, and their teachings are in a different way. Different examples are given, different concepts are given in that Upanishads. But we can say that in general, some of the important teachings we can abstract it from the Upanishads. Upanishads deals with the three concepts, that is a Jiva, individual soul, Jagat, universe or cosmos, and this Brahman, the supreme soul or ultimate reality. They contain the discussion about the nature of Jiva, Jagat, and Brahman, and the relationship between these three. The Upanishad, there are different views and explanations, different theories are given by the different Upanishads, different ways are there to explain it. One of the explanation which is given about the relationship between the Brahman and Jiva is like a relationship between the mud and mud pot. A slight modification of the mud appears as a form which has been given a name called as a pot. In reality, if we observe, mud alone is there. There is no separate identity of the mud pot. It is the mud only. It's just a different shape of the mud is called as a mud pot. So the Vedanta says there is ultimately no difference between the Brahma and Jiva. When an identification with the body, mind and intellect happens, it is called as a Jiva. This wrong identification with the body, mind and intellect is called as a avidya. That is a wrong knowledge. What about the Jagat or universe? As per the one of the philosophical view from the Upanishads says that the cause alone is the real and exist, and all the effect or phenomena in themselves are unreal. Brahma is real, and substantive and effect, that is universe, is essentially unreal. The famous example given to explain this concept is that of the snake and rope. In a dim light, the curled up rope appears like a snake and terrifies us. But when the light is shown, the rope is seen, and what it is, when we come to know this is a rope, all the fear disappears. The same like that, because of this avidya, ignorance, Brahman appears like a universe, but the only Brahman is the reality. So it is called as a essentially unreal. That is a Sat and Asat. Both, it is the Jagat is a Sat and Asat, both explained by the one of the philosophical terms. And in the Upanishad there are Mahavakyas. Mahavakya is a great statements or essence of the Upanishads, or the, we can say, the relationship between the Brahman and Jiva are explained in this Mahavakyas. Like this, it is given that in Aitareya Upanishad, Prajnanam Brahman, consciousness is the Brahman. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Chandogya says, Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi means you are that Brahman. There is no difference. Mandukya Upanishad says, Ayam Atma Brahman. Satchit Ananda is the real identity, the Swarupa, called as a of Brahma and Jiva. Both are Satchit Ananda. But Jiva is covering of has a covering of the ignorance of the avidya. When that avidya is we can, if we demolish it, or when we come to know what is the reality, when we realize the real entity of self inquiry with the self realization, we can experience the same Swarupa of Satchit Ananda, same like a Brahman. Next one is a Smruti Prasthana. Smruti means that which is remembered. These Smrutis are composed by the sages. This has a human origin. It contains the three things: Purana, Itihasa and Dharma Shastra. Three are called as a Smrutis. And there are 18 Puranas, number of Dharma Shastras, all these things are given over there. In that Itihasa, the two things, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, are the part of the Itihasa. And this epic Mahabharata is written by the Vyasa. It has 1 lakh shlokas and divided into the 18 Paravas, main chapters. And in that, 6th Parava is a Bhishma Parava. In that subchapter, 23 to 24, 23 to 40 are about the Bhagavad Gita. Gita contains 700 shlokas and divided into the 18 chapters. Gita synthesizes the several paths of the spiritual realization based on the premises that people are born with a different temperament, different tendencies, gunas. We can experience the different characteristics. The Gita text acknowledges that some individuals are more reflective and intellectual, some affective and engaged by their emotions, some are action driven, yet other favor for the experimenting and exploring what works. Gita presents the different spiritual paths for each personality type. Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga. So different parts are given by the, that's why we can call it as a experiential part is given by the Bhagavad Gita. The next one is a Nyaya Prasthana or Tarka Prasthana. It is also called as a Tarka Prasthana, logical sense of the Vedanta. To understand the teaching of the Upanishad, one needs a very high intellectual level. One may find there are contradictory statements or very opposite, different opinions, opposite views, and so one may get confused. So Badarayan Vyasa has written this Brahma Sutra to clear the ideas of the Upanishad. It is written in a sutra form. Sutra is a cryptic and extremely short notes in the Sanskrit, that is called as a sutra, to serve the hints to understand without any conflict the teachings available in the Upanishads. Brahma Sutras are also known with a different names, that is a Vedanta Sutra, Bhikshu Sutra, Sharirika Sutra, or Uttar Mimamsa. The author is Badarayana Vyasa. The Brahma Sutra contains the 555 sutras divided into 4 chapters, Adhyaya, and each chapter contains the 4 padas, sections, and each pada there are several adhikaranas or subtopics. So the first chapter, Samanvaya Adhikara, inquiry to the Brahman, definitions of the Brahman, and all about the Brahman is the real entity, the goal of the life, everything about the Brahman is explained in the first chapter. Second chapter is a very important one, that is the Avirodha. The Astik Darshan Shastra, orthodox philosophical schools of the Hinduism, has interpreted the teachings of Upanishad in the different way. So at the general level or the gross level, we can see there are very different views or different opinions given by these Shastras. In this chapter, Badarayana Rishi confronted these views and logically proved that there are no conflicts in the Upanishads interpretation. Upanishad states a very clear and gives a correct idea. One may find it in a different ways, different lookings, different overlooks, but Upanishads are giving the same teachings. So Avirodha chapter is also very important one. In the third chapter, that is a sadhana, means the means of attaining the Brahman are elaborated or discussed in this, described in this chapter. All the details are given for the different paths. And fourth one is a phala or adhikaran. The result of attaining Brahma is explained in this last chapter. Brahma Sutra discuss about the nature of man, God, universe, life, creation, and their interrelationship. They also talk about the death and post-death scenario. The sutra highlights about the Brahman, a real entity of the Brahman, and the relationship between the Brahman and Atman are explained in this. The another important aspect is discussed in this Brahma Sutra is about the Mrityu and Moksha, the death and post-death scenario. The general normal peoples, normal mortals are for the death, that is Mrityu of the body, and where the Atma goes, how it takes the Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira, and how the rebirth occurs, and all these things are given. And what is a moksha? What happens after the death of the sense? That will be a moksha, merging of the Atman into the Paramatman, universal soul. And what happens after this? All these things are detailed explanation is given in the Brahma Sutras. The central aim of the Vedanta is a we can say a liberation from the of the man from the all sufferings. Sufferings are of the 3 types. It is given in the scriptures, that is adhyatmika, related with the body and mind, adi bhautika dukkha, related with the outer world, with the society, with the other scriptures, and all these things. This due to the other people, animal, or anything. Adi daivika dukkha is from the unknown factors, natural calamities, and all these things. So this Prasthanatrayi offers us the 3 methodological approaches: revelation from the Upanishads, reasoning by Brahma Sutra, and experiential by the Bhagavad Gita. The 3 texts provides us the 3 different levels of support to us seekers. All these scriptures are like a guru. and teaches and guide us to know the reality of the world in which we are living. The This world is not permanent, it is not real, and it's a source of suffering and delusions. They teach us, or we can say, these scriptures help us for the self inquiry, the real identity of the Atman. It is not a body, not a mind. Self is eternal, divine, and transcendental. Our senses are responsible for the desires, attachment, and instability of the mind. Restraining of the senses is must to achieve the stability of the mind. We should cultivate our buddhi, that is a discriminating intelligence, to know the difference between the real and unreal, truth and untruth, divine qualities and demonic qualities. Because the true knowledge illuminates and liberates, while the ignorance veils our wisdom and held us in the bondage. These scriptures guide us for the purpose of the karma. The proper karma has to be followed. It explains about the karma siddhanta, theory of the karmas. It tells us only actions are not responsible for the karma, but the desire and attachment behind the action are responsible for the karma. One should not escape from the responsibilities and obligatory duties, but our actions should be without attachment, without seeking the fruits of the actions. That should be a nishkama karma. To know that true renunciation is the renunciation of our desires only. Why these teachings are important nowadays? In the contemporary age, the advancement of the science and technology has expanded the horizon of the human knowledge and made the life more comfortable and more secure. On the other hand, the life has become more insecure too. The rising number of the crimes, corruptions, unrest, and demoralized almost at every level of the society. In these circumstances, it is wise to consider whether the old values enriched in our ancient texts may be useful in solving the crisis of the contemporary age problems. When the science fails to check such propensities, the ancient scriptures have to be restored for the moderating influences. If we get more and more power from the science and more moderation from the scriptures, their combination will certainly yield a good, balanced way of the life to everyone. So, this was a small introduction of the Purushartha and Prasthanatai. Thank you.